it's an 80-20 solution, and I think in robotics, if we realize that 80-20 can still be extremely valuable, that's a way for the technology to walk in, get used, get adopted, and not have to be perfect. But what it needs to do is not make bad mistakes that are expensive by some set of measurements that cost them time or money or waste. So one of my, let me go back for a second. I'll give the 3 big points in my keynote just to frame it. So I feel like robots are late in arriving, like in homes and offices. I think all the basic fundamental technologies are now there. It's like with electric vehicles, the big thing that was missing for years was the battery. The motors were there, the controllers were there, cars were there, roads were there. We get lithium ion, and suddenly, very quickly, you get electric cars. So with robots, there's power, there's compute, there's machine learning, there's artificial intelligence. They can move safely in environments and not run into people. All the building blocks for really cool solutions are there. The development tools are still not highly integrated. They're kind of one-off. And so as an illustration of that, on the front side, I think you'll find that you'd have people working together from different domains, trading a lot of information to get an integrated solution. So the power management person, so the power management person is talking to if it was a vacuum, the sweeping person is talking to the room planning algorithm person is talking to somebody else about industrial design, and they're exchanging a lot of technical information back and forth. That's kind of bad. It's not efficient, but it's where the industry is. And I think like in the U.S. automotive industry in the 60s, General Motors, Pontiac made their own engines and transmissions, Chevy made their own engines and transmissions, and Oldsmobile did. And they all said it's because we have to solve the problem as one piece. Well, I got a Ford truck now with a Mitsubishi transmission. So they've moved up the stack to where they can define an API between an engine and a transmission, and 2 different manufacturers can cooperate. So the engine experts don't communicate as much with the transmission experts. I mean, they talk about the interface, but they no longer have to worry about what's on the other side. So that's a modularity that comes in. That still needs to happen in robotics to make it easy to put different solutions together and more practical. That'll come because the technology comes up the stack on its own. Another headache is on the tail side is scale. So if you're going to put 50,000 or 100,000 products maybe a month into the market, which is where you're going to get low prices, and if you had the demand, it's hard to build that. If they all need to be connected to the internet, that's hard. If you're selling them in Europe, you might have to take parts back for recycling. So a little startup company here could have a very technically capable robot, but they might have a hard time. If somebody actually said, I'll take 100,000, but I'm a global company, they might not be able to fulfill that. Well, big companies, Siemens has scale, phone companies has scale, HP has scale, so I feel like that's been solved and can come through. So my point is, there's a lot of pin-up demand and need. We've got aging population demographics, people moving into cities, massive urbanization. Don't have robots at home. I need to take care of elder people. I need to be able to be somewhere else and not spend fossil fuels to get there, right? And so there's pin-up demand. All the pieces are there. So what I'm saying is when robotics bust into home and office, and I think in less than 5 years, my personal opinion, it'll be significant. It'll be like floodgates opening. It won't ease in like Walkman getting better and digital players. It's going to just explode as fast as electric cars.
I mean, I actually use robotics in my home literally every day.
Your chair, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right now, my biggest problem with the chair is government oversight and government budgeting. And the thing is that cost analysis and stuff like that. People, a lot of the companies are saying, where's the money? Not, there's a need, let's fill it.
And there's a regulation. I was talking to a professor at OSU, and he had been doing some work on a robotic wheelchair, and he said it might actually be easier for him to take his work out as a robotic golf cart, because that's not regulated at all, because it's not a medical device.
Right.
And as soon as it's a medical device, it's heavily regulated, and it's this kind of funny chicken and egg, because you're going to have to get an economy of scale to get the prices down to where a lot of people can enjoy it, and maybe the chair doesn't have to be perfect to still be useful. It obviously needs to be safe, but it doesn't have to be perfect, right? And I'm sure that your chair is expensive, and it probably costs more than it should, if you know what I mean. This chair here is about $6,000, and
I mean,
And I can buy a pretty nice used car for $6,000.
yeah, exactly.
And
the
that's
thing
not
is
as
that I actually had 2 chairs that I got previously that actually work better than this because the government keeps cutting back what they're saying, and because it's medical, they figure, okay, this is insurance, so we can charge whatever we want. So $1,300 for a joystick. I mean, $1,800. I mean, for the motor. I mean, for the motor assembly. It's insane.
It's nuts. Our daughter broke her ankle and had surgery just a few weeks ago, and we borrowed a wheelchair, not motorized, from friends. And the front wheels it's like a reinforced fiberglass hub and spoke, and one of them failed. It just broke. So, friend's chair, I better get one from the manufacturer, put it back, just like when I got it, $80. And I'm like, it's a solid rubber tire, and reinforced fiberglass is like, that's not even patented anymore. It's the way they've been making drill casings, housings since the 60s. But it's medical, and which is right. And so it's an 80. I mean, I can buy a wheel for a car for $80.
I was looking at one of the companies,
or a bicycle, which is pretty high tech.
Yeah, I was looking at one of the companies in here that makes, motors and stuff. The ones that
The zero lash, the whole.
Well, the thing is that $450 for just this tiny little actuator motor that could be replaced by what you find in God forgive the word, a $10 dildo.
Yeah, well, maybe there might be a little more to the motor, but I understand what you're saying. And we did. So some of it is how much there's a balance between how do you solve the problem like in mechanical domain versus electronics. And I'm not an expert in this. That in those motors, I used to work on printer control systems, and the early ones we had used stepper motors, which were relatively speaking expensive, but easy to control. Go 73 steps. That's so many degrees, and it stops and it won't move. And one of our engineers figured out they could put in essentially a lot less expensive DC motor with an encoder and a nice feedback loop, which all costs less, sort of a crappier system mechanically, but because it had this nice electronic control loop on it, we actually got great performance out of it. So and at slew speeds it was smoother, it didn't have this velocity ripple, so it actually worked better and cost less. We had to make a non-recurring engineering expense of designing the feedback loop, which was basically a bunch of software. Well, the great thing about programs is the manufacturing of software is pretty easy. You just duplicate the bits, right? So you do the work once and you're done, and we save the bill of materials cost. The last point I was going to make on the robotics, and then we can kind of range is, okay, so they're missing in a lot of places. The enabling technologies and building blocks are there. All the solid impediments are gone. It's kind of like waiting for it to flow. I think, especially at home, but even in the office, robotics can be very social, and people can make emotional bonds to it. And when I gave the presentation, I had a picture of a little girl hugging a puppy.